Hey friends, it's Jess. Welcome to Pages in Grace. Here I am in the middle of December filming a clip for the books I've read so far. Today is December 13th, Friday the 13th, and I have read 2 books so far this month. I'm in the middle of another one, but I finished 2 nonfiction books, and I wanted to share my thoughts with you on these 2 books. The first one that I finished was Fascinating Stories Fascinating Stories of Forgotten Lives by Charles Swindoll. I read several in this series, and I know I talked about this in an earlier video where I kind of shared just in the first chapter where it talked about what's your purpose in life, or what are you striving towards? Are you striving towards quantity or quality? And I thought that was super impactful. This book is chock full of little reminders to make sure that our focus is where it should be, on living the life that Christ has for us. There are parts of the book that it felt like, so when I picked this up, it was talking about fascinating stories of forgotten lives, which it starts off doing, but then it kind of picks out some people from the Bible that I don't think they were forgotten. We start with Abraham and Isaac. And maybe it was just parts of their story. I don't know. I don't know what, how that was really woven in, but I did enjoy it. I think I ended up giving it 4 stars. There were probably a couple points where I didn't, jive theologically, but I did enjoy this read of this book. He talks about Abraham and Isaac, which definitely doesn't seem quite, forgotten, in my opinion. But they're still very impactful stories. Now, later on, he does get into some people in the Bible that are a little bit more lesser known, or, he even talks about David. He talks about David and Solomon. I don't know. It doesn't feel forgotten, but I think maybe it was just stories from their lives that may not have been as well known or as well revisited. I'm not quite sure. I don't know. I really enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend picking it up. It is an older book. It's one that I found at a thrift store, and you might be able to as well. The second book I picked up this month is Adopted for Life by Russell D. Moore. I was sobbing reading this book. Just sobbing. I think it was the second chapter. The first chapter talks a lot more about how we are adopted into Christ's family and that aspect of adoption, where the rest of the story goes into his personal family journey through adoption. They adopted 2 boys from Russia. So it is a private adoption situation, different from our family, but still a lot of the same processes that happen, and a lot of the same heart behind the adoption. And so, he had me sobbing in that second chapter, talking about, I think it was the second chapter, doesn't matter. He had me sobbing towards the beginning of the book, where he talks about his wife and his journey through infertility. And he said a lot of things that don't get said out loud a lot. Just the thoughts that might go through your head if you're on that journey. And all of these other people that clearly are doing some things that are not okay, can have a lot of children. Why can't we? He did a really good job at walking through that with you. He's been through it. Walking through that and talking about the biblical view of infertility and that it is not a curse. It is it's something to pray about and to pray through and figure out what God's calling in your life is. And he did a really good job with that. So I think the reason I didn't give this quite 5 stars, I really enjoyed the book. But the one critique I would have is, and it's just a difference of opinion on how to include the adopted child after adoption and how to speak to them about family and about their heritage and all of that. We definitely had some disagreements on that. Yes, they are absolutely part of my family, but they do still have those ties to previous family that I want to respect and love about them as well. So just know, if you're going into this to read a book about adoption, there are a few parts that I was just not fully on board with, but I still would recommend to read it. It was a very thought-provoking book, so I appreciated that about it. So those are the first 2 books I read. It's crazy, I've already read 2 nonfiction, but they were 2 books that were on my 24 and 2024 list. I think I have 6 books left on that list. It's December 13th. I can do it, but there's a lot of nonfiction, so I will catch you up in the next clip. All right, I'm back to finish off the books I read this month. There were 5 or 6. Let's see, it's this stack right here. I believe I've already talked about a few of these books. I haven't gone through those clips yet. I had a good reading month. I spent a whole lot of time with family. The holidays are always a time where I read when I can, but I don't make it a priority. But I also, during this month, I spent a lot more time on my 24 and 2024 list that I wanted to get through. And I got through a good portion of it. I did not finish all 24 books, but I think I got 19 or 20 of them, so I'm pretty happy with that. For books that had been sitting on my shelves for quite a while to be able to get through, I was excited about. I read A Christmas Carol. This is just part of this one. A Christmas Carol, I buddy read this with Bethany from Bethany Brings Books. I really enjoyed this reread of A Christmas Carol. I wish I should do this every year. I know the last few years I missed it and I didn't get to it, but I really enjoyed going through it. I think I was talking to Bethany about the fact that I wish I could read it for the first time as an adult. So at this point in my life, I've seen several movie adaptations of this story, and I don't know, I wonder what it would have been like to experience it in book form for the first time. I think that would have been something pretty special. But of course, I've seen all kinds of children's versions of this before I ever got to reading the actual book. So again, 5-star, really enjoyed it. A quick, easy read that I do try to get to every year. I don't always get to it though. All right, the next book that I have is a big old book. It was on my 24 and 2024 list. I will talk about it in that video as well, so I'll just briefly touch on it here. And that is A Lineage of Grace by Francine Rivers. So I listened to this one on audio. There was no way I was making through this whole book in the month of December without that audio help. I enjoyed it. I had, let's see, sorry, it goes through Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, Bathsheba, and Mary. And I really enjoyed Tamar, Rahab, and especially Ruth. I think part of my struggle was the narrator might have been an issue for me. There was just this modern feel that didn't feel accurate. And that was probably just the narrator and the way that some of the words were spoken. It just didn't feel like it fit with the stories that were being told. I also sometimes struggle with biblical fiction. I enjoy biblical fiction. I enjoy biblical fiction when it is a story that is not fully told in the Bible. I like how it brings the stories that you just might hear over and over and over in the Bible, and it brings them into a context that you can experience it and internalize it so much more. But then there's also that part where you're internalizing a fictional story. So I try to balance, and I try to be very, very cautious with the biblical fiction that I do pick up. Like I said, I enjoyed this one. I actually didn't finish the last one. I DNF'd it, actually. There was something about, and maybe it was the narrator, maybe, I don't know. But I read the first, I don't even know where I stopped. It wasn't very far into Mary's story that it didn't feel right. It didn't feel right. And that's why I said I always go into biblical fiction ready to put it down just in case. Mary's story just wasn't one that I was comfortable with, and so I didn't read that one. But the rest of it was good. I think I ended up giving it 3 stars overall. I know, is it fair to rate a book when you didn't finish the whole thing? I feel like I got through enough of it that I could leave a rating. I probably will be letting go of this one, but there are, I don't know, I just have to be so selective with biblical fiction, but Mary is not a person in the Bible that I would like to read biblical fiction about. I think that's just, that's really what it is. But overall, 3 stars. Okay. Next, I finished Rita Sepetys Between Shades of Grey. I enjoyed this one. I hate to say I enjoy books that are about such difficult topics. The writing was really good. I love Rita Sepetys' writing. And I loved the author's note at the end where she tied everything back to her own life and her own family, which I thought was very interesting. I had no idea about this time. And I feel like I say that every time about Rita Sepetys' books. I had no idea, or I didn't know this happened this way. Like I knew like tiny bits of it from history classes throughout my schooling, but didn't know anything about this one. So in this book, we have a family who was whisked away from Lithuania by Soviet soldiers. They were put into prison camps, and it tells their story from a perspective that I really didn't know about and had never heard of. I enjoyed it. I struggled with the ending. I feel like it just kind of dropped off at the end. I wish it was a little bit more closure at the end. I really enjoyed it. I think I gave it 4 stars. Yes, I gave this one 4 stars. I still love Fountains of Silence more, but I'm excited to pick up more from this author. Okay, the last book I read this month was Five Stolen Rings by Gracie Ruth Mitchell. I really enjoyed this one. I had seen it go around Instagram. I ended up picking up a copy and finishing it just before Christmas. I tend to do this. I have a list of books I want to get through the year. And in December, when I'm thinking I'm going to be reading Christmas books, I focus on my list from 2024 instead of the Christmas reads that I might want to read. So in this book, we follow Stella Partridge as she ends up back home. She has lost her job suddenly. She's in a pretty tough spot. She moves back in with her family and is feeling pretty down about her life. And she ends up taking a house sitting gig for someone in town, and that ends up being the stepmother of her old friend, who she kind of left behind in high school. And it was super cute. It was really funny. There were a few moments that I was a little bit off. I think I gave this one 4.5 stars. There were just a couple moments where it was like praying to the gods of whatever situation, which, why put it in there? I don't know, but it knocked it down for me. But I did enjoy the story. It was a lot of fun. 4.5 stars for this one. All right, so that's all the books that I read in December. It was a good reading year. It was a very good reading year. And I can't wait to get to some of the wrap-up videos that I want to do for 2024. I waited till the very end to make sure, because I'm always reading up until the very last day. And I wanted to include anything that I might have read in the year in that wrap-up video. So if you're still here at the end of the video, thank you so much for spending your time with me today, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.